What up? Lou Know It here, back with another review. This time I'm talking about The Irishman on Netflix and with a limited theatrical release, the new Scorcese movie. So it won't be a long review. Really, my main point is that I think this movie is overrated and kind of boring. Um, it took me to almost three because it's sessions to watch it. So I turned it on and I watched it for like an hour, and then I knew it was another couple hours coming, so I put it off for later, and then I turned it on another time just for a little bit, and I wasn't really getting into it, and I was like, all right, let me just wait and come back to this, and then I started again back from the original point that I'd stopped it at, and I finished the movie, and I just don't really get all the praise that it's gotten. I mean, it got nominated for a lot of awards. It didn't win any at the Golden Globes, so maybe it's not getting as much, praise as I perceive it to. But if I feel like a lot of critics and people I've heard really liked it and praised it, and I just found it pretty boring, honestly. I mean, it's well made. Scorsese's not gonna not make a well-made movie, and the technology's pretty impressive. I saw there's like a making of video that I saw online, which I'll see if I can find it and put a link in the description of like how they did the special effects, because it is interesting how they did the de-aging process in this, which was different from the way it's been done in a lot of other stuff, and it was partly because of the way what Scorsese wanted. He didn't want to have like a lot of motion capture and little dots on people's heads, because he didn't want to get in the way of like a kind of a organic, natural performance where people could play off each other. And so they developed this camera system where they had these two infrared cameras on the side of the regular camera, and those so basically you could film it somewhat normally, just like with cameras placed normally, and then they would be able to pick up that and then animate based on that. And actually I was surprised watching that video at the level. As far as I could tell, it seemed like some of the stuff was like full, I thought they just kind of like tinkered with people's faces, but a lot of it was like, it seemed like it was like full CG. And then they motion captured all the movements and everything through these cameras of the actors' faces, but then I think it was like fully CG on top of their face in the actual scene. A lot of scenes. Anyway, all that aside, the technology being impressive, directing is solid, acting is solid. It just was kind of boring, and it was too long. It didn't need to be that long. It wasn't, exploring anything that hadn't been explored before. I mean, it's kind of ironic because, he's known recently for criticizing or sort of commenting on Marvel movies, saying they're like theme parks, and he got flack for it, and they're not actually. I don't think that it was meant as much of an insult as a lot of people took it as. He was just basically saying like these are movies that get made by kind of committee, and it's a business more than it's a and I think that's interesting because in this movie I kind of feel like it was one of the problems was that it was too his sort of. Okay, so I was mentioning that in the context of I don't think that he was really saying anything new. It's like he's talking about, part of what he's talking about is like being kind of an auteur, having like an actual voice and like what you're trying to say. I mean, this was nothing. He's done this kind of movie so many times before. I don't really see what, or if anything, that was new that he was trying to say with this movie. I don't see it as revelatory, revolutionary in terms of anything. In terms of the story, the plot, the characters, it's all been done before. It was done well in this, but it was too long. and it was, it was boring at a lot of parts. And I think part of that also was that Netflix, he talked about how Netflix kind of gave him free reign, and I'm sure they wanted to because it helps their brand to have, they got like the new Michael Bay movie, they got the new Scorcese movie, so they're getting like these big name directors who are known for cinematic releases to make movies for Netflix, and it helps their brand name to say, to be able to say like we're premiering the movies of these top tier directors, and so because of that, they gave him kind of free reign in terms of budget, in terms of, he would never have been able to make, I don't think, a 3.5 hour, or I guess, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was pretty long, that was Tarantino, but like, for the most part, you almost never see a movie that long. In fact, I can't think of another one. I think Dance with Wolves was like 3 hours and change, but like a 3.5 hour movie is pretty much unheard of in theaters because of constraints of making your money back through ticket sales, run times, how many showings can you get in a theater. So basically, what I'm saying is that I think that he was able to make this movie as long as it was because Netflix gave him that freedom, and I think it hurt the movie, and I think that freedom hurt him. And it goes to something that I've said about directors in general, that I think sometimes the reason that early works from directors is their best work is because as they get more freedom, because they have this leverage of like success with movies, so the studios are like, we'll give you more money, we'll let you have more control. They start going crazy. They start going, getting carried away, and they sometimes lose. Like sometimes it's good to have those limitations because it forces you to craft your story and your movie, with more intention, as opposed to just being like, I could do whatever, so I don't have to rein anything in, and you end up with a 3.5 hour movie that did not need to be 3.5 hours. And I understand he wanted this like epic feel of like seeing the life of this person, these people, but largely this one person. But it didn't need to be that long, and I say that because for me at least, it was boring, a lot of it. So a lot of times I create reviews because even though I don't have a lot of people watching on my channel, I disagree with the popular opinion of something, and so in this case, that's kind of what compelled me to make this review, is that this movie's overrated. I just don't get why people love it so much. I guess I kind of get it in the sense that it's good acting, and it's Scorsese, and it's all these great actors, and it makes sense, and it's not a bad movie, it's not poorly made, but it's to me, it was boring and not that compelling, and nothing new, and a lot of hype about, not really something worthwhile, contrasted with a movie like The Joker, which I just watched for the second time last night, which is, was amazing, and like really something new in a lot of ways, and funnily enough, inspired by Scorsese's movies. And then you got this movie, which is just like, it's just, it's kind of forgettable. I don't want to go back to it, and it was just boring. I didn't, and the characters, I just didn't really care. Like, I didn't care about any of the characters. You compare it to like, I don't know. My favorite of Scorsese's is Goodfellas, and it's like you really cared what happened to these characters. You got invested in them. Even the ones that you didn't like, you wanted to see what was going to happen to them. And in this, it was like, like I really don't care what happens to any of these people. And I don't know if that's down to the acting and, or the writing. I'm hesitant to say it's the acting because it's solid actors. Although I do think De Niro and Pacino are overrated, especially later in their careers. I think earlier on they were better. Certainly Pacino early in his career made some great movies. Although as a side note, which will probably make anyone watching this take my review less seriously, I think The Godfather's overrated also. I find that a little boring at parts. But that it's much more original and definitely much better movie. So I'm not trying to compare this to that in terms of that, but it's just anyway, that's considered one of Pacino's best. But I'm thinking like Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, like those kind of movies. He was really good. And then De Niro, I mean, as I said, Goodfellas, and not to mention early Scorsese stuff. De Niro was really a great actor. So I'm hesitant to say it's the acting in this movie that cost it, but I just the characters weren't compelling. So that's basically my review. I mean, if I had to like rate this movie, I mean, I'm going with like 6.5 out of 10, maybe. I mean, in terms of like quality of like production and everything, I mean, it's a solid movie. The rank, would rate higher, but like in terms of sort of subjective enjoyment value, I really wouldn't put that high. It just wasn't. I can't recommend it, and it was boring. And I'm genuinely surprised that people seemed to respond as well as they did, even despite the fact that I know it's Scorsese, everyone loves him, and I love Scorsese, but like it just wasn't. This was a miss for me. So that's my review. I definitely think you can miss this one, but it's on Netflix. So if you got Netflix and you're a fan of movies, give it a shot. But it's not, I don't recommend it at all, and I didn't like it. All right. Peace.